Do we even rest? The answer to that is no. So if you eat, sleep, and breathe basketball like I do, Utility Sports is the place for you. Thank you all so much for tuning in for more NBA draft coverage. No longer are we on the 2025 NBA draft, though. This is my way too early 2026 NBA mock draft. I am so excited for this upcoming draft cycle. This is a loaded draft class with a bunch of high caliber, high quality players. We're going to have some awesome upperclassmen. We're going to have some amazing incoming freshmen. This is a loaded draft. If you thought the 2025 NBA draft cycle was fun, if you thought the 2025 NBA draft class had some real talent, buckle up, hold on. The 2026 NBA draft has a chance to be generational, and that is not a word I throw around very often. The top three is loaded, and I am so excited to jump into it here this year. If you guys, again, do enjoy, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. And let's get into it with our video preview. The NBA draft order you see in this mock draft is set by my loose predictions for standings. Now, I am recording this, of course, before free agency. Some things will shake up. Some things will play out a little bit differently. So if you disagree with a ranking or you think this team might make the playoffs or this, that, or the other thing, let me know down in the comment section below. But of course, be respectful. Of course, we are still so far away from the start of the season that I'm sure even my own kind of opinions and expectations will change a bit. So don't get too riled up in the comment section. One thing I will say, it took me about 2.5, 3 hours to actually set up the draft order for this year because of all the convoluted trades. There's 3 team swaps. There's swap best if it's not in the top 8. There's this, that, and the other thing. Protections. It's all over the place. It took me so long to get it all put together. So hopefully you guys do enjoy. And this is a fun introductory to some of the incoming prospects, incoming freshmen, some new international prospects to talk about. It's also a hello to old friends. We'll see some prospects who we talked about at length a bit last draft cycle who ultimately chose to go back to school. And I want to hear from you as well down in the comment section below. Who are some prospects to watch for, especially if I don't include them? There's always at least 3, 4 guys that do not make it in my early mock drafts, in my early big boards that end up having a great freshman season. A fun story, Brandon Pajemski's dad actually, after one of my way too early mock drafts, the year before Brandon Pajemski's draft, actually messaged me over on Twitter and told me to take a look at his son's film. After transferring out from Illinois to Santa Clara, I was heavily impressed, and I was one of the first people, in fact, I believe I was the first person on YouTube to put Brandon Pajemski in the first round mock, and he ultimately was a first round pick. So hopefully you guys do enjoy the content. Again, comment down below who you think I should be checking out if they're not included in this mock draft. And let's jump into it here with the first overall pick. I do have the Utah Jazz on the clock. They, of course, in 2025 shook things up a bit on draft night. They walked away with Walter Clayton, an NBA champion, at pick number 18. And at pick number 5, despite no workouts, despite lack of clarity on if he actually wanted to be there, Austin Ainge, his first ever selection as the president of the Utah Jazz, pulled the trigger on forward Ace Bailey. And now the Jazz find themselves here in a position with how much young talent they have to probably be losing a lot of games. It's just so hard to win at a high level in the NBA when you're playing so many young guys. I do think they're going to give a lot of opportunity to Ace Bailey, to Walter Clayton as rookies as well. So this Jazz team probably slated to lose a lot again. Remember, they had the best odds in 2025. The lottery did not do them well, but what a storyline it would be for the Jazz to have the first overall pick here and walk away with the first overall pick, selecting forward Dybantsa out of BYU. This is really a 3-man race for the top spot right now between Dybantsa, Cam Boozer, and Darryn Peterson. I went back and forth. First of all, Carlos Boozer, former Utah Jazz legend working within the organization now, I'm sure he'd be pushing a little bit for his son Cam Boozer first overall, and I think there is still a realm of possibility. This freshman season for these 3 guys, Dybantsa at BYU, Cam Boozer at Duke, and Darryn Peterson at Kansas, will shape the NBA draft in a big way at the very top. They all have their pros and cons. We'll start with Dybantsa here, who is first overall in my way too early mock draft. He's been really impressing in his Team USA play as of late, and at around 6'9", with significant perimeter talent, the ability to put the ball on the deck, an elite downhill finisher. You think about rim volume, some of the things that have concerned me on other previous forward prospects, though that does not seem to be a problem here for Dybantsa, who has been an elite downhill slasher throughout his high school ranks, gets to the rim at ease, and can finish above the rim as an elite, absurd talent with some awesome physical gifts. And then you look at his shot making as well. There's a lot to be impressed in that regard. Has had some incredible moments for prolific prep as a shooter, shot maker, scorer, and has showcased that on the Team USA stage as well a bit in scrimmages, combines, and just from his individual film. It's so easy to be blown away by AJ Dybantsa with the physical gifts, the length, the size, but also additionally all of the other talents, the actual on-the-court functional skills. And I think for Utah specifically here, after drafting Ace Bailey, the Ainge family's looking at this and saying, is this our Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum combination? Can we walk away with Ace Bailey and AJ Dybantsa in a 2-year span, like how the Celtics took Brown and then Jason Tatum? And I think the Jazz will be trying to repeat that magical 2-run draft that the Celtics had a few years ago to set them up for an eventual championship. Utah Jazz fans would be extremely excited to see Dybantsa transition from BYU to the Jazz. It would be a great staying home story for the NBA, which is why, if you believe the NBA lottery is rigged, that maybe this will happen, that the Jazz are destined for the first pick this year. But Dybantsa is a tremendous option and a tremendous target for the Jazz. And if they're able to walk out with him at the first overall pick this year or somewhere in the top 3, they're going to be very happy with that outcome. Now at pick number 2, I have the Brooklyn Nets. I talked about how losing is very easy to do when you have young players. The Brooklyn Nets, well, they drafted 5 rookies this year in the first round alone. So with that in mind, how could Brooklyn look to position themselves moving forward? And with all of the playmaking that they were able to add, with all of the talent that they were able to accrue, especially at the guard position, I think you know which way I'm probably leaning here now, second overall for Brooklyn. We're going to get an elite, little bit of do-it-all kind of player here. Second overall, I have the Brooklyn Nets selecting forward Cam Boozer out of Duke. Big, long, mean, skilled, and useful. This guy has a lot of textbook skills. You thought about all the ways that Cooper Flagg was able to impact winning for the Duke Blue Devils. I think this year is a really great opportunity for Cam Boozer to kind of build off that spotlight Cooper Flagg had. The Blue Devils are going to have an incredibly talented squad once again. Jon Scheyer continues to build that program up. It was a very large hole to fill. Not only Cooper Flagg's hole that Cam Boozer will be stepping into and trying to supplant, but then also looking at Coach Krzyzewski. Coach K goes out the door. Jon Scheyer has stepped up in a big way. Now, they haven't won a title yet, but the sheer talent that Duke has been able to replenish year over year over year has been so impressive. 3 top 10 picks in the 2025 draft and a guaranteed top 3 pick here in the 2026 draft. In fact, going forward, I think there's a real chance Cam Boozer actually at some point becomes the favorite to become the number 1 overall pick. But as of right now, with where the momentum currently lies, I am settling with him going second overall to Brooklyn, a team that probably wouldn't look in the backcourt too long, especially given the fact that they did invest so heavily in the backcourt in the 2025 draft. So instead, I have them walking away very happily here with a forward in Cam Boozer who can still handle the ball, create for his teammates a little bit, but has some dominant defensive flashes, some elite play finishing tools, a little bit of self-creation that I want to see him continuing to build up into, and I think Duke will give him some of that runway as well, just like we saw with Flagg this past year. Not to the same level, but I still think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for Cam Boozer to work with and build off of, and I'm so excited for the Brooklyn Nets. If they get this kind of pick and all the playmaking juice that they now have around him, the future is incredibly bright for Brooklyn moving forward. Third overall, the Washington Wizards. Really liked what they were able to accomplish, especially night 1 of the draft. They walk out with Trey Johnson. They take a huge upside swing on someone like Will Riley. They get some tremendous wing scoring bets. And I think the best way to supplement this team now, you look at what they have in the front court. Alex Sarr. They, of course, drafted Bilal Coulibaly a couple drafts ago. You're also still betting on and banking on long-term Trey Johnson. Drafted Keyshawn George, Bub Carrington. You've got this combination of length, size, athleticism, some real shot making now into the mix with this 2025 draft class. What do you want to add to it? Well, third overall, this is what makes this draft class so special. Third overall, I have the Washington Wizards selecting guard Darryn Peterson from Kansas. This is a guy who third overall, typically you're not, buzzing, roaring, saying, oh my gosh, we got a cornerstone franchise pillar. But that's exactly what this draft class is going to do for NBA teams. There are 3 elite prospects at the very top of this year's draft. And Darryn Peterson, for me specifically, some of his biggest standout performances at the high school ranks came against AJ Dybantsa. I'm talking 50-plus point showings in wins where he willed his team to W's over the guy we had go first overall in this mock draft. I think it's a real 3-way coin flip right now between Peterson, Boozer, and Dybantsa. I like Peterson's skill set a lot, a ton of shot-making talent. The handle's very creative. He's got great positional size as a combo guard who can play a bit of point guard probably at the next level, especially with how heliocentric the game is. You're trying to play through your stars. Darryn Peterson has star written all over him. The Washington Wizards, while you still have Bub Carrington, obviously you're invested in long term, Darryn Peterson becomes the offensive face of this franchise, and as Coulibaly, Sarr continue to develop and really bolster this team defense, Peterson becomes the offensive load holder and the guy who shoulders a brunt of the offensive creation for this team, and that makes everyone else happier with their ability to play off of that, find success. And that's why I love Trey Johnson so much in this draft, because now if you find yourself in a position this next year to get a top 1A player, Trey Johnson's movement shooting, off-ball skills, and ancillary scoring become all the more valuable. And I think a team like Washington walking out with Darryn Peterson a year after getting Trey Johnson, this is an absolute nightmare team to deal with long term, with all their length, speed, quickness, athleticism, and now a ton of scoring upside in their backcourt. The Wizards are here to stay if they do get a top 3 pick in this year's draft. Now moving on to number 4, the Charlotte Hornets here at this spot. And listen, pick 4, this is kind of a letdown spot, right? There's 4 picks in the 4 picks done through the lottery. The rest are done by order. While yes, moving up to number 4 is typically a good thing. You love being at that spot. Being 4th overall is just going to feel like you were so close, but yet so far away from one of those 3 guys. But this class still very, very good, very special. And I think 4th overall for Charlotte, a team that was able to draft Ryan Kalkbrenner on night 2 of the NBA draft this year. They got a big man who I think long-term at least can be a good rotation player for them. I still think after trading away Mark Williams, Jusuf Nurkic on an expiring contract, this team does need another big man in the mix. So 4th overall, I have the Charlotte Hornets selecting Jayden Quaintance out of Kentucky. This is a guy who has already played college basketball but is just now freshman aged. You might be saying, how is that possible? He reclassified up, was not eligible for the 2025 NBA draft because of his age and date of birth. He will now finally be eligible for the draft in the 2026 draft. And boy, was he good as a true freshman at Arizona State. Transferred now to play for Mark Pope at Kentucky, and I think he's about to take off in a big way. Averaged over 3.5 stocks per game in just 29 minutes per night of action for the Sun Devils. Jayden Quaintance is a name to remember. Super effective, super functional as a downhill finisher. Shot 60% on twos as, again, a reclassified underage true freshman for the Arizona State program. Now, the three-point shot's a huge question. Shot sub 20% from the three-point line. And the shot as a whole is still a work in progress. Actually shot sub 50% from the free throw line. So there's still a lot of work that has to be done into crafting and developing his overall game. But the impact here, the reason to take someone like Jayden Quaintance is extremely evident and obvious. This is an elite functional athlete with real value at the rim on both ends of the floor. He can be a dynamic, athletic screen and dive player, and also a guy who's going to get in the passing lanes as a big man. He's going to, I think, really stand out at the end stages of this draft cycle process with the combine, his measurements, all of the physical traits that he possesses. They're going to give way to his incredible block rate, impressive steal rate for a big man, and it's going to cement him as a likely top 5 pick in this draft. I have him higher right now than anybody else really seemingly does, having him go 4th in this draft class. I'm a big believer in his game, and I like him a lot for the Hornets, given the way that their draft and the trade of Mark Williams has played out for them so far this offseason. At number 5, we look at the Atlanta Hawks. This was a hot button topic after night 1 of the draft this year, where the Pelicans traded this pick unprotected to Atlanta to move up from 23 to 13 for Derek Queen. Now, while I love Derek Queen as a prospect, really excited about him, the one thing I'll say is if he was in this draft class, he would firmly not rank in my top 3 because of how good Dybantsa, Peterson, and Boozer are as players. So that's what really scares me here for the Pelicans. A little bit of lottery luck, and you might be gifting the Atlanta Hawks an incredible prospect. Now, 5th overall, maybe something the Pelicans are a little bit more comfortable with stomaching, but with how young their team is after trading for Jordan Poole and, drafting Jeremiah Fears in the top 10 as well, I don't think the Pelicans are going to be a playoff team. I don't think they're going to be that good. Now, we'll see if Zion plays a full season out of nowhere all of a sudden, then maybe this team just figures it out, goes on a little bit of a run, and doesn't send that good of a pick to Atlanta. But with how I'm projecting things right now, the Hawks are going to have a pretty good chance at that top 3. And in this mock draft here at 5, I have the Atlanta Hawks selecting forward Nate Ament out of Tennessee. This is a player who ultimately chose the Volunteers because of Rick Barnes, of course, the coach there, who ended up coaching Kevin Durant nearly 20 years ago, which is crazy to say, nearly 20 years ago for the Texas Longhorns. Now, in a different shade of orange, Nate Ament, who has very similar physical characteristics and an emerging skill set on the perimeter to Kevin Durant, will have a chance to be a focal point for the Volunteers, who over the last few drafts have lost Dalton Connect, lost Chaz Lanier, have lost a large volume of their scoring, and Nate Ament stands to be a player who is going to assume and step into a majority of that scoring opportunity and volume for the Volunteers. And I think if you're a Tennessee fan, you're super excited about this. The trip from Tennessee down to Atlanta is not too far of one. The Hawks, of course, kept Asa Newell pretty close to home as well at number 23 in this draft. And I think for the Hawks, the upside here is immense for Ament, a guy who, if everything clicks for him, he could turn into one of the more dynamic scorers with the ability to shoot over the top of the defense, find spots on the floor, get to weak spots. He's what we're going to call as a spot scorer. I still think he has to get a bit stronger. I think his handle and his functional footwork still have to take meaningful strides forward. But again, we're at the very early stages of this 2026 draft cycle. There's a lot of time. There's a lot of room for development. Ament's going to be a guy you want to keep your eyes on. Remember, a lot can change here. Maybe he solidifies himself as a top 4 guy. Maybe he slides down the board a little bit. You never know what's going to happen, but teams are going to stay heavily interested, heavily focused on a player like Nate Ament because of all the physical tools. This is the player archetype we continue to see consistently, routinely go in the top 10 every single draft because teams are constantly looking for 6'7", 6'8", 6'9" scoring wings with a scorer's mindset. Nate Ament checks those boxes. The way he went about his recruitment to Tennessee definitely checks those as well. And this is that high upside swing for a half-court scoring option for the Atlanta Hawks after a really solid trade that they made with the Pelicans on draft night in 2025. Moving on now to the 6th overall pick, the Sacramento Kings, who did get active themselves in the 2025 draft. Traded back up into the first round to get Nick Clifford at number 24. And then at number 42, took Maxime Reynaud. Got some really solid players in the 2025 draft. Now they're going to be able to build off of that here. 6th overall, they have control of their own pick. And I have them selecting guard Dash Daniels from Melbourne. The Australian younger brother of Dyson Daniels, of course, staying there in the NBL and will have significant interest across many NBA teams in the top 10 this year. I would be utterly shocked if Dash Daniels falls out of the top 10. If you look at the trajectory that Dyson Daniels is on, the amount of interest and intrigue that garners and draws from a majority of executives, GMs, you look at the interest around the league right now, and as it's a copycat league, teams are looking at what Oklahoma City has been able to do in terms of forcing turnovers, getting out and running. You are looking for players who are similar to Dyson Daniels, and there's no better place to look than his own brother. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and Dash Daniels is a player who's going to have some elite defensive playmaking instincts. Now, the one thing I always want to caution people with when you are evaluating someone's family relationship, right? Like Dylan Harper was Deron Harper's kid, you still need to go through the process evaluating them separately. They're not the same human being. They're not the same person. There are going to be slightly different strengths and weaknesses at a minimum. And Dash Daniels is not the same player as Dyson. I think this year is going to be an important one to watch him play. But I think there are enough similarities here in the style of play, the size, the frame, the skill set, that teams are going to be heavily invested in adding him to their roster. And I think for Sacramento, with Dash's solid size, his defensive instincts, whether Domantas Sabonis is a long-term part of the future or not for Sacramento, Dash Daniels is a surefire bet to have a defensive impact on a team. And I think the Kings are going to be searching for that long-term around Nick Clifford, around Maxime Reynaud, around Devin Carter, around some of those other young pieces that the Kings have on roster already. I think Dash Daniels is that kind of investment the Kings would make in the top 10. Now at number 7, the Chicago Bulls, of course, could be a team to watch for in free agency. It's always hard, too, because these way too early mocks, I don't know what the teams are planning. I don't know what they're going to get done in free agency. I have my best guesses, but every once in a while I'm wrong. Wink, wink. You guys know that, I miss here and there, just being a little funny. But the Bulls at 7, what I have them doing here at this spot is selecting center Chris Cenac Jr. from Houston. This is a 5-star true freshman center going to play for the Houston Cougars, who came up just short this past year in their pursuit of a national championship. But they're back. They're locked and loaded. Milos Uzan's back with the program. And now Chris Cenac steps in as the highest recruit on the team, the most highly touted recruit, and one who is going to have a significant impact for Houston, a team that has traditionally been built with size and a large depth at the center spot, playing bigger forwards and having a real impact at the rim, a real presence there, and a team defense that is always so well coached. Now Chris Cenac gets to come in and block a ton of shots, use all of his physical gifts. He is going to dominate college basketball as a true freshman. This is a player who, if it's not Jayden Quaintance, who has that meteoric rise up to number 4, I could see it being Chris Cenac because of how valuable he will be for the Houston Cougars defense, how good their ball contain is, and how good that will make him look as someone who's going to clean up the rest on the back end, whether it comes to the rebounding or blocking shots to the first or second row of the stands. I think offensively as well, this is going to be a nice little relief pressure point. The fact that Milos Uzan is staying at Houston as well helps this quite a bit offensively, in my opinion. Cenac is somebody who's going to screen dive, play out of the pocket a bit, play off the middle of the floor. I think Uzan's mid-range presence, ball handling capability, the ability to handle ball pressure is going to help get Cenac the ball in certain windows, certain areas of the court that is going to usher in some offensive production. So Chris Cenac, I think, would be the long-term future for the Chicago Bulls. We'll see what happens with Nikola Vucevic this offseason, if he's finally traded or not. But Cenac, as the Bulls turn toward the future, they added Noah Senge. They've gotten a lot of long, quick, mobile athletes. They drafted Matas Buzelis a year ago. Chris Cenac Jr. could be kind of that finishing touch at the center spot, building a more athletic, complete, fast unit for the Chicago Bulls. At pick number 8, the Toronto Raptors here now. For Toronto specifically, I really like the Colin Murray-Boyles pick for them. And with Brandon Ingram in the mix now, the Raptors, it's hard because the league is in such a great spot right now. Even the teams that are dealing with some Achilles injuries in Milwaukee, Boston, and Indiana, I still think their teams are very good with those guys out. So We'll see how the standings shake up. I think Toronto could be a team that definitely makes the playoffs. I had to rank teams here. I'm going to sit down at some point, give a lot better thought to this. So if you're a Raptors fan, don't get too upset. Just look at this mock draft and say, hey, he wants to give us a high pick. That's absolutely awesome. 8th overall, I have them here selecting forward Karim Lopez of the New Zealand Breakers. From Mexican descent, Karim Lopez has been on NBA radars for a long while now. Of course, started playing for the New Zealand Breakers as a teenager, and an early teenager, not your prototypical 18-year-old professional basketball player. I'm talking well before that. And I think teams are already, first of all, have already done many scouting rounds on him. And for a player who is a talented handler of the basketball at his size, some real point forward capabilities here, some slashing, some two-way play. I think right now it's kind of a blank canvas for the long-term development for Karim Lopez. You obviously want to see, I think, a little bit more shooting development for him, especially off the dribble, taking that pull-up jump shot and getting it to the next level, getting it to the next tier for his game. I think is going to be an important thing. But this year for New Zealand and in the NBL, this is a great opportunity to kind of solidify his draft stock. Not only is that top 3 of this draft so loaded, but you're looking at guys like Karim Lopez, Chris Cenac, Jayden Quaintance, all having some dominant traits. Dash Daniels, and when it comes to the event creation, there's a lot to love in this draft class. And it's not just that historic top 3. It's really a top 8, 9, top 10, where if Ament hits, if Karim Lopez turns into the player that many think he can become, this draft has so much talent, and a lot of it comes with great length, size. We've only drafted one real point guard up to this point in Darryn Peterson, and it shows you how attractive this draft might be as smaller guards tend to fall. In this draft, you're looking at a bunch of long, fluid, good athletes who can have an impact all over the court. Karim Lopez fits into that DNA there that Toronto has in terms of defensive impact and two-way play and quickness, covering space. And I think Lopez could be a good offensive bet for them moving forward as well. At number 9, the Memphis Grizzlies here. This pick comes via the Phoenix Suns. Phoenix, of course, does not own this pick. This pick came to Milwaukee as part of the Desmond Bane trade via Orlando. I think this is a real premium asset for the Grizzlies to work with. Now, while I think the Suns got a lot better on draft night, my old adage that winning with rookies is very hard, that still stays true here for Phoenix. So even though I love the Suns draft as a whole, it's not like it's all sunshine and rainbows year one. And Memphis still is sitting here preying on this pick, hoping it can move up. Potentially, this could be kind of that golden card for the Grizzlies to shape their future post Desmond Bane. But 9th overall, I have them in this way too early mock draft, selecting forward Tyran Stokes. And he is undecided at the time I am recording this. Interestingly enough, this is a 2026 college basketball recruit who might be undergoing some of the similarities in the process that we saw from Shaedon Sharpe, who reclassified. Now, I do think Tyran Stokes will play college basketball this year. Shaedon Sharpe, of course, did not play college basketball. Spent some time with Kentucky without really playing for them or being on their actual roster. Tyran Stokes will likely play. He, of course, has had some real success throughout his FIBA track record. And he's been on NBA radars for a while now, even with how young he is. He is the top recruit currently based on ESPN's Top 100 recruiting board in 2026. He's a highly talented 6'7" forward with some ball handling capabilities, some real shot making talent, and great athletic tools to boot. Everything you would kind of expect for a number 1 recruit in a class. Stokes checks a lot of those boxes. Now, not every single top recruit, especially when you're, not a true senior in high school. Every year there's, the risk you run that someone might not be fully what you're anticipating them to do. And I think this year will be a very interesting year for Stokes as he reclassifies up. Will he have a smooth transition to college basketball or not? And especially this kind of archetype, this kind of style of play sometimes has a little bit of that variance year to year. We've seen guys like BJ Boston have terrible seasons as a top recruit. We saw Isaiah Collier struggle as well as a, kind of scoring downhill guard. Stokes not that kind of archetype, but still a player that, a very young player. We'll see how he matures, but he is draft eligible here in 2026. And I definitely think we'll have a ton of suitors, especially if he has a pretty solid season. It's not like the expectations are going to be for him to be a 20-point per game scorer immediately in college. And I think as long as he puts together some nice showings, not a super consistent outburst, but a solid collection of performances throughout the course of the year that he will definitely garner top 10 interest in this draft. And I think Memphis would be more than willing to take that stab if they don't move up in the lottery after that Desmond Bane trade. At number 10, the Portland Trailblazers here now. This pick is lottery protected. I think Portland did get quite a bit better, trading away Anthony Simons, bringing in Drew Holiday. They drafted Hanson Yang with a long-term outlook for their center room. I don't think the Blazers are done quite yet at the time I'm recording this. We'll see what they do. But 10th overall, I have them here selecting forward Peat from the University of Arizona. Big, long, lengthy, strong athlete. And I think for the Blazers specifically, if you do look at what their roster needs right now and what I was really expecting them to draft at number 11 on draft night before trading down with Memphis, who drafted Cedric Howard, I was kind of expecting the Blazers to add a hybrid forward, someone who could play a little bit at the 3, a little bit at the 4, and kind of round out their rotation a little bit. They surprised me with that Hanson Yang pick, drafting a big man who has some hub playmaking potential, definitely some real good tools and skills to work with. So I'm not hating on that Hanson Yang pick, but it still leaves a little bit of a gap here. And while they do have Jeremy Grant right now on the roster, I think long-term, if you're looking to add to this team, especially from a youth perspective, drafting someone like Peat who can fill in as your 4 a bit, behind Denny Avdia, alongside Denny Avdia for stretches. This is the type of athlete, this is the type of functional player that I think the Blazers could be after. This is, again, another highly touted recruit, another highly touted player, someone who perhaps on draft night could go much higher than pick number 10. I do think some teams and executives will fall in love with this guy as a physical specimen in some ways and a guy with some real talent to boot. I think he's going to be, again, this is way too early of a mock as well. So part of this, you're going through a lot of projection on what you think is going to happen for these players. And that changes throughout the course of the season. You see some of their weaknesses get exploited a little bit more. You see some more of their strengths show up in big ways. And I think, obviously in way too early, we're just kind of doing some early introductions for you guys to get to know these prospects a bit. But Peat, from a physical standpoint, this is what you're banking on. And I think his talent specifically in Arizona is going to be utilized in a big way. They're losing Caleb Love. They're losing Carter Bryant. They're going to lean on him a bit more, I think, this year, especially given some of the guys that they lost. Henry Vasar is another one who they lost in the portal to UNC. So Peat might be a big focal point for them. And I think it gives him a runway and a pathway to really garnering and maintaining top 10 draft pick status in this year's class. Now at number 11, the San Antonio Spurs here. And I think for the Spurs specifically, while they do own a swap option with the Hawks, I'm not sure if they're going to have the opportunity to actually exercise that swap option. Atlanta got quite a bit better this offseason with Kristaps Porzingis. We'll see if Porzingis can stay healthy. We'll see if Jalen Johnson can stay healthy this season. But I do like the Hawks roster as a whole. So the Spurs, Spurs fans, I'm super optimistic about you guys as well. And you know that. If you've been watching the channel, I thought you were one of the biggest draft winners on draft night with what you were able to accomplish getting Dylan Harper and Carter Bryant this year. I love the Spurs' future, and I think at some point it's going to start leading toward wins this year. Victor Wembanyama very well might be a top 5 player in the world this upcoming season. I'm so excited about this team. And 11th overall, I have them adding to it with forward Caleb Wilson out of UNC. This is another long, fluid player. Length continues to be king in the NBA. You look at the meteoric rise of Cedric Howard from where he was on May 5th to where he was on June 25th. From a draft perspective, kind of a back end of the first round projection, maybe even early second round projection. Seemed like he was going to go to Duke. Ultimately ends up being the 11th overall pick in the draft to Memphis because of all of the attention to his length and size, measured in very well at the combine. And Wilson, another guy who possesses some very good physical traits, length, size, some talent as a scorer of the basketball as well. This is another highly touted recruit coming in. And UNC's pretty loaded, man. They got Henry Vasar, someone who's going to protect the rim, and I think they're going to allow Caleb Wilson to roam a bit, cover space in ground. He does so quickly. And I think for the Spurs, if you're looking for the finishing touches to your roster, while you did get Carter Bryant this year, it's another long, fluid athlete into your front court. I love what the backcourt looks like long term. I think Devin Vassell can be such a nice catch-and-shoot weapon for them. And then you still have Sohan, you have Carter Bryant. Let's get one more long athlete who can cover ground. and get out and really make plays happen. And I think Caleb Wilson can be that for them, 11th overall. At number 12, the Miami Heat here. And for the Heat at 12, after getting Kasparas Jakuponis at number 20, which was one of the biggest steals of the draft in my opinion, at 12 I have them coming out and drafting another guard, Mikel Brown from Louisville. This is another guy heavily associated and heavily involved with Team USA for FIBA basketball. And this guy's very, very talented. Big, long guard, some significant talent as a shot maker and as a ball handler and as a decision maker. And I think for the Heat, while Jakuponis is going to definitely buy you some time as a ball handler, decision maker, creator, throughout the entire draft process, we kind of hinged and went back and forth between, is he a point guard or is he a combo guard? And I think the beautiful thing here for Miami, it's a talent grab. Mikel Brown might end up going much higher than pick number 12. There's a really good chance of that because Louisville is going to give him a lot of opportunity. They're going to allow him to play through mistakes, and he's going to be able to build his confidence throughout the year as well. And as a result, he might go higher than 12 if he has some really strong performances on a consistent basis, which is very, very possible for the Louisville program this upcoming year. But I do like Brown's ability to handle, create for others a bit, initiate offense. And I think if the year develops, or as the year progresses and goes on, if his game continues to reach new levels, new strides, I think as we're, again, way too early here. We'll see how everyone adjusts to college basketball, especially these incoming freshmen. But there's already a lot to like. There's a lot of intrigue. I can tell you already, a lot of executives are excited about the potential with this kid. And for Miami, even though you just selected Jakuponis, you have to figure your front court of the future is in place with Adebayo and Ware. You have to, figure you still like Jaquez. Haywood Highsmith's going to be a part of this team. You have Tyler Hero on the wing. Let's add to the backcourt a bit more. Let's get greedy here. Add a player who can be super awesome for them long term, and you just draft the talent, BPA at this point. And at this spot, a year from the draft, I think Mikel Brown is a guy who's going to garner a lot of that BPA attention. Now moving on to pick 13. Memphis, their second lottery pick, of course, earlier at pick number 9 had that asset from the Suns. And at 13, I have them going with guard Labaron Philon from Alabama. This is where we start saying hello to some old friends. Labaron Philon, going into his sophomore season for the Crimson Tide, I think is going to have a real opportunity ahead of him. Grant Nelson, gone. Clifford Amori, gone. Mark Sears, gone. The Crimson Tide under Nate Oates are going to look for more offensive production, more creation opportunities for Labaron Philon, and hopefully they're going to be able to surround him with some more defensive talent in the process. And I think Philon's defensive event creation rate was one of the best things that he had going for him going into the 2025 draft before ultimately withdrawing. And I think that decision, looking at the landscape of the Alabama Crimson Tide roster, actually made a lot of sense for him. He has another year to build upon his game, add to his three-point shooting. I think if he shoots the ball a bit better this year, he can really cement his draft stock. And for me, I never mocked him in the top 18 picks this past year. You see how high I'm mocking him here to start this process. Now, I could definitely be wrong. He could definitely not build on a good freshman season and have a great sophomore campaign. But if he does, there is a real pathway to solidifying himself as a lottery pick or a fringe lottery selection. And I think for Memphis, after being able to draft a wing with upside, a forward with upside at number 9, coming back at 13 and drafting a guard who can be a complementary fit alongside John Morant, or as a leader of a backup unit, could be still driving the force, be a driving force, and be someone who can be a driver of the basketball as well for when Ja is out of the game, which I do think Memphis just needs a little bit more creation anyway. Love Labaron Philon for them here at 13. At number 14, the Oklahoma City Thunder, one of 3 first-round picks that they have in this mock draft. Again, the rich get richer. Get used to another year of talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder a lot. Now, this pick, it is top 4 protected. You never know what's going to happen with those 76ers. They got a little sneaky at the end of last year, tanked, and ultimately kept their pick, and it ended up becoming VJ Edgecombe. So, Sixers fans, don't count your ducks before they hatch. But here we are at 14. I have them going with Dame Sarr, the Italian prospect who will be playing as a freshman in college basketball for the Duke Blue Devils. This is one of 3 Duke Blue Devils, actually one of 4 Duke Blue Devils you will see in this first round mock draft. It's a testament. Duke, who lost 5 players to the draft this past year, Flagg, Knipple, Malawach, Sion James, and Tyrese Proctor, they are churning out more and more draft prospects. This is a testament to John Shire. It's a testament to that program strength. And Sarr specifically comes in with a very moldable skill set. Someone who has some of those European traits, the ability to move the basketball, create off the dribble a little bit, selfless style of play, but he's got some very good functional athleticism. He's long, little wiry right now. I think he's putting on muscle at an okay rate, but still could add a bit more. He's very young, so he's going to be able to build to his NBA frame a bit, especially early in his career. And this is a guy for Oklahoma City. Well, listen, if we're going to be honest about it, do they have needs? Not really. They just won a championship. If I had to bet, they win over 70 games this upcoming season. This might be the best team we've ever seen, if I'm being completely real. Oklahoma City is that special. They're that good. As a two-way powerhouse, unbeatable roster almost, the Thunder are just unreal. And Sarr, while yes, he's an awesome prospect, could be someone who is really additive for them long term. Does he fill a lot of needs? No. But the Thunder, they have draft picks. We have to mock somebody for them. I'm not doing mock trades a year ahead of the draft. I'm just not doing that. Dame Sarr is the selection here for them at number 14. Number 15, the Detroit Pistons here now at this spot. Detroit building off of a really good year this past year. I do expect them to keep Malik Beasley, although it sounds like they might lose Dennis Schroeder. Jaden Ivey should be back in the mix. So with them losing Schroeder and the value that his ball handling playmaking delivered for them, I am going to look into the backcourt for the Pistons here. 15th overall after drafting Chaz Lanier in the second round, adding a shooter. I think we just need one more playmaker. 15th overall, I have them selecting guard Bennett Stirtz from Iowa. One of my favorite players to watch in all of college basketball this past year. Dominated Division I basketball for Drake. Led them, of course, to the tournament with head coach Ben McCollum, and then followed Ben McCollum to the Iowa Hawkeyes. Was one of the top transfer portal gets in the entire transfer portal. Of course, there was no doubt that he was going to ultimately play for Iowa when he decided to forego the 2025 NBA draft. I was so bummed when he pulled out of the 2025 NBA draft. His statistical profile was brilliant. Incredible assist rate, super low turnover rate, and you watch him play, you turn on the film, all of that is matched by the eye test. His ability to get to spots in the pick and roll, his understanding of, oh, if I get blitzed, then the short roll's open. Oh, if I don't get blitzed, if I'm facing drop, I need to take this space. And when I do, if the big steps to me, I've got a dump off or a lob, or I've got the backside big open. Hey, if the help side guy comes, I got that skip pass over the top. He just processes the game very smoothly. It shows up in his film. It shows up in his statistical profiles as well. The numbers love him, and my eyes love him as a basketball player. And I think for Detroit, first of all, I'm trying to sell you on this pick seemingly already. I'm not a salesman, but if it came down to selling basketball players, I feel like I'd be the best one in the world, because a guy like Bennett Stirtz, I just get fired up about. Just really like the way that he goes about the game, about his processing, and the ability to handle the basketball. And I think for Detroit, one of the things that they're going to be lacking long-term if they do lose Dennis Schroeder is just another reliable ball handler who can initiate action, weaponize Jalen Duren as a lob threat, play off of Isaiah Stewart's awesome screening ability, and Stirtz just checks all of those boxes, man. I'm so excited about him as a player. I think he's going to show up big time in the Big Ten this year. He's going to solidify his draft stock, and when he does do all of those things, he will be a top 20 pick in the 2026 NBA draft, which has me, again, so fired up. Pick 16, the Milwaukee Bucks here now. This is the swap worst between New Orleans and Milwaukee. Now, at the time I'm recording this, I am not anticipating Giannis Antetokounmpo requesting a trade. If you're a Hawks fan, that's exactly what you should be cheering for right now, because you're sitting here with that swap best between Nola and Milwaukee, and if the Bucks are a lottery team, your odds just doubled for that number 1 pick. So there's a lot to bank on. There's a lot to hope for if you are Atlanta. But the Bucks, obviously, you're not hoping for that. So 16th overall, I have you taking guard Elijah Arenas from USC. First of all, thank God that Elijah Arenas is okay. Of course, had that scary incident, was hospitalized with a coma. Just really scary. And for Gilbert Arenas, who's in a media position, I am just so happy for him and his family, and for Elijah that everything is okay now, that he's, healing and past that situation. And I'm just very happy. First of all, that's the most important thing to say here going into this draft process. Secondly, if he has a rough year, that is understandable. Like, I don't want anyone to place super high expectations on him going into USC, especially after this kind of situation. I hope Elijah Arenas is, first of all, focused on his health and recovering perfectly, and then worried about basketball second. But if he does play, and if he plays a lot, and if he plays well, it would not shock me, because I do think there's a lot of talent here. He's a very skilled player, someone who can put the ball on the deck. And if you look at how Gilbert Arenas' career played out on the court, super talented player, right? I think Elijah Arenas is starting to scratch the surface of some of his upside as a player who can handle the ball, who can make shots off the dribble. And I think if he gets to the right amount of rim volume at USC, this is a player who could definitely return lottery value possibly in this year's draft class. I have him going at 16 here. I think Milwaukee is going to be in need of some guard play long term. Damian Lillard, well into his 30s, coming off an Achilles injury. I don't think you want to hold your breath too long on what his career is going to look like down the road here. So for the Bucks at 16, I think you take an upside swing. You take a talented young player with some off-the-dribble scoring expertise and talent, and you put Elijah Arenas into your roster, and it gives you a build-around young piece moving forward. Number 17 now, the Golden State Warriors here at this spot, and for Golden State, I have them selecting forward Yaxel Lendeborg from Michigan. This was many people's favorite draft prospect in 2025, and I'm not misspeaking. Yaxel Lendeborg had a huge contingency of fans that were enamored with his game going into the 2025 draft. Now, I wasn't necessarily one of them. I did like Lendeborg as a potential first-round pick, but I did not have him extremely high on my board. I still think there's a lot when it comes to the actual touch, finishing around the rim, converting on some easier opportunities, bunnies if you'd call them that I think he needs to clean up. And I do think going from UAB to Michigan, we're going to see some of those opportunities maybe exploited a little bit, but he's got a lot of talent around him. Morez Johnson, also Ade Mara, Elliot Cadeau in the backcourt. I am so excited for the Wolverines. I think you're going to see a lot of 45 action with Lendeborg handling the ball for May's offense, and I think the Wolverines are going to be really good this year. And I think Lendeborg is going to be not only a go-to player for them, he was ranked as the number one transfer portal player in the portal this year. Not only is he going to be super valuable for them, but I do think he will solidify his draft stock as a first-round pick with a good season in the Big Ten. Maybe not a completely, utterly dominant season, but a very, very good one, and one that I think will draw interest from a lot of teams. And for the Warriors specifically, you're looking at getting a forward with range, defensive instincts, and rebounding value. And I think one of the things about the Warriors, not only has this team been historically pretty small, but especially in most recent years when they've kind of strayed away from playing bigs in general, they're just very, very small. And they don't have a lot of guys who can cover space. And even the guys who do cover space, they're not big at the rim, and they can't block shots. They can't cover that ground and be a challenger at the rim. And I think that's where Lendeborg, his all-around game, his stock rate, and also his ability to just cover space and be in the right place at the right time, get impactful on the glass, do a lot of the little things well. As a big, strong, fluid athlete, that's exactly what the Warriors are looking for. They feel very happy to select him at number 17. At number 18, the Indiana Pacers. This pick is well-traveled. First traded to Toronto in the Pascal Siakam trade originally, then traded to New Orleans in the Brandon Ingram trade, and then traded back to Indiana just days before Tyrese Halliburton tore his Achilles. Joe Dumars has been extremely active, and ultimately, with that in mind, the Pacers walk away and say, well, thank you very much. We'll take our pick back. You can have pick 23 this year, which was later moved again by New Orleans. And the Pacers say, thank God we got this selection back. It's insurance in case, with the Halliburton injury, in case they're actually really bad. But I still think this team is actually pretty good. I still think that they will be a playoff team in the Eastern Conference. I think their style of play just is going to win out. Now, if they miss the playoffs, would I be overly shocked? No, I just think they're going to be like kind of that fringe, like 7-8 play-in territory. And I have the Pacers at number 18 selecting center Flory from Kansas. This is one of the biggest winners of Darryn Peterson's commitment to Kansas. And when Peterson did commit to Kansas, Bill Self said, "This is the best player I've ever recruited." And that is obviously incredibly high praise. Kansas has had some real juggernaut prospects, some real juggernaut players in college basketball. And Darryn Peterson is going to help Flory out in a big way, not only with Hunter Dickinson now out of the equation. It should open up more opportunity, more like actual minutes for Bidunga to play within. But with Peterson coming in, being a high volume ball handler, someone who's going to create a majority of Kansas's offense going into this next year, especially with how much belief Bill Self has in him, Bidunga becomes an elite screen and roll threat for this team, which is going to have a significant play style shift, and I think that's for the better for these two guys as prospects. I think Peterson, Bidunga in an up-tempo setting, much different than what we've seen from Kansas with Hunter Dickinson on the roster. I think the Jayhawks are back in business here. Bidunga, who is an elite athlete, I think he's going to have some really incredible analytic numbers this year from a steal block rate and also from a dunk rate this season. I am so excited for him, and I think the Pacers, especially with their situation, I do expect them to keep Miles Turner, but on the fringes of their center rotation right now, you look at some of the absences they have at that spot. You know, Isaiah Jackson coming off of an Achilles, James Wiseman coming off an Achilles, and then also you factor in Tony Bradley on no long-term control really for the Pacers at the time I'm recording this. Flory becomes a no-brainer choice and an excellent fit next to Haliburton with his speed and athletic gifts, long-term fitting into that Pacers play style very, very well. At number 19, the Minnesota Timberwolves. This is the least favorable of their pick and Utah. The Jazz pick would convey to Oklahoma City if it's outside the top 8. There's so many things in this draft, like I said, but Minnesota ultimately should have this pick on draft night, and at 19, I have them selecting forward Tunde Yesufu from Baylor. This is a big, strong, physical athlete, kind of a powerhouse in a way, and somebody who I think for Minnesota would be a real intriguing bet for them. They were active on draft night, especially in the second round, trading out of their selections, ultimately walked away with 2 big men on draft night in Joan Behringer and Rocco Zikarsky. I think that validates a bit some of the reports we had about Rudy Gobert's availability in a trade to the Phoenix Suns. Ultimately did not happen, but with that in mind, now that the Wolves have invested heavily in some backup bigs in Behringer and Zikarsky, Yesufu becomes an interesting long-term bet as a wing forward type for them with some really great strength, some similarities from a body type perspective to Lou Dort. He's a good above the rim finisher, something he did a ton in high school. And I think if you're looking at positional needs for this team moving forward, while you do have Terrence Shannon Jr. and Rob Dillingham, 2 guys that they drafted a couple years ago now at this point, you're looking at very thin, slight players. Let's get a big, strong, physical brute into the forward wing spot alongside them in Yesufu. Jaden McDaniels is super thin and wiry, and I think if this team just wants to get a bit bigger, a bit stronger, a bit burlier, Yesufu can be your guy here at number 19. Moving on to pick number 20, the Los Angeles Lakers, who had one of the biggest steals of the 2025 draft in forward Adu Thiero. Now at number 20, they're in position to finally address one of their big needs, and that, of course, is the center spot. While I love the Thiero fit, it doesn't solve your 5-man situation you've got going on. So here I have the Lakers selecting center Patrick Ngungba from Duke. Of course, he was the lesser known, lesser talked about Duke big man. Kaman Maluach really stole the show, ultimately became the 10th overall pick in the 25 draft to the Phoenix Suns. But Ngungba is in a position now next to Cam Boozer, next to Caden Boozer, next to Dame Sarr. There's so much talent that he's going to be able to play alongside once again and do so probably as the starting center there for the Duke Blue Devils. So I'm really excited for Ngungba this year. I think he's going to be the guy that takes a massive stride forward in his draft stock this year. I already think a lot of teams were excited about him as a potential maybe late second round pick if he would have came out this year. I think returning back to Duke was the best choice for him. I think he's going to solidify himself as a very likely first-round pick in this year's draft after a very good season with the Blue Devils this upcoming year. I'm really excited about him as a prospect. He's going to screen, dive, catch at the rim, protect the rim a bit. I think his mobility and motor are going to really hold him in high regard for teams, and I think the Lakers would do very well with this pick, giving Luka Doncic a long-term investment at the center spot. The Lakers are about to invest a lot of money in Luka Doncic within the next 12 months, and doing so means you have to invest in players around him too, and Ngungba, Aduthiero, two great examples that the Lakers can definitely find as young pieces that complement Luka's game in a big way. At 21, the Oklahoma City Thunder back on the clock again. Remember earlier, they went with Dame Sarr. Now at 21, I have them selecting guard Isaiah Evans out of Duke. If you are trying to kind of wiggle and pinpoint after drafting Thomas Sorber, one little weakness this Thunder team has, it's the fact that they don't have a lot of shooting, and they don't especially have a lot of movement shooting. The guy on the roster that really kind of tickles that fancy a little bit is Isaiah Joe. Well, let's get another Isaiah who can really light it up in the building here. Isaiah Evans out of Duke. This is a player who, as a true freshman, just did not have a lot of opportunity for the Blue Devils. Didn't get on the court a whole bunch, but when he did, boy, was he a little bit of a laser, a little bit of a flamethrower. He'd have stretches where he makes 2, 3, 4 3-pointers in 4 or 5 minutes. And you go, why is John Shire not playing this guy more? Well, Duke was loaded. They had Knipple, they had Flagg, they had Sion James, they had Tyrese Proctor. They had a lot of good talent. They couldn't just give everyone a lot of minutes, but Isaiah Evans I really thought made the most of his minutes this past year, and now with kind of a shuffling of the deck a little bit, I think he's slated to have a much bigger role, and with his shooting talent, with his outside scoring, and his functionality as an off-ball mover, this becomes another little chess piece for Mark Daigneault to use in small-to-small screens. This is an excellent pairing with Isaiah Hartenstein in dribble handoff. This is an excellent pairing with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as a small screener, and this is a great fit alongside Isaiah Joe as well. If you want to play two shooters at once, something OKC doesn't lean into really ever. They love their defense, they love their defensive versatility, but playing Joe and Evans together could give Shai Gilgeous-Alexander more spacing than he's ever really been able to deal with the Thunder. So I love the idea of selecting Isaiah Evans here. This is a really good player. This is one of the few ways that you can actually make the Thunder substantially better in the draft. Of course, just drafting talent helps them, but drafting talent in a skill set that they're kind of lacking depth in when it comes to movement shooting, and getting a really good one like Isaiah Evans here is just such an awesome player for them at 21. At 22, the Atlanta Hawks here. This is a swap worst with the San Antonio Spurs. Now, I am pretty high on the Hawks roster. They have that top 5 pick possibly from the Pelicans that we've talked about at length in this video. And I think with Porzingis, with Asa Newell, with Jalen Johnson healthy, with Onyeka Okongwu, Trae Young, Dyson Daniels, Zachary Sachet taking a step forward in year 2, this Hawks team is going to be good. They have a huge trade exception that might bring them in another good player, maybe a Nickeil Alexander-Walker type. The Hawks are really awesome. 22nd overall here, I have them going with guard Boogie Fland from Florida. Right now, I think one of the things that they're still lacking a little bit is just a tad bit of playmaking off the bench. And it's not easy to want to spend a first-round pick on just someone you're projecting to be a backup point guard for you, but Boogie Fland is in a position here after honestly, like kind of a disappointing year at Arkansas, but kind of not. Had over a 3-to-1 assist to turnover rate, but just did not score the ball very effectively. I think playing at Florida next to Alex Condon, next to Hauk, and playing in a system that really prioritizes guard efficiency, I think he's going to find so much success for the reigning champion Gators that he's going to re-solidify his draft stock as a likely first-round pick in this year's class. Now, he is very thin, and he's a bit smaller of a guard, so we have seen those draft archetypes kind of fall a little bit year after year after year, but Boogie Fland might be the outlier with his ability to process the court, and if the jump shot, especially the pull-up shooting, takes a step forward, if he gets a little bit more rim volume, I could definitely see him becoming a weapon for a team to consider, especially at 22 for Atlanta when you're looking for a guard to back up Trae Young. Boogie Fland becomes that kind of investment that does make some sense for them this late in the draft. At 23, the Boston Celtics here now. For Boston specifically, I still project them to be pretty good. This is going to be a hot take. People are going to say, well, how do you have the Celtics making the playoffs? They still have Derek White at the time I'm recording this. They still have Jaylen Brown. They have some really solid pieces. Peyton Pritchard, I think, is ready to scale up in a big way with no Tatum, no Drew, no Porzingis. I think the Celtics are still going to be pretty good. I trust that they're going to win the math game night in, night out. They're going to shoot more threes. They're going to make more threes than their opponent. So with that in mind, I think Boston can still be a pretty good team. 23rd overall, I have them taking center Magoon Guath from San Diego State. What an interesting player. Huge stock numbers, a lot of blocks, super long, good mover, athletic. Shot the 3-ball really well this past year for San Diego State. And shot the 2-pointer actually pretty efficiently as well. Over 50% on 2s, over 37% on 3s. He's long. Now he is very slight. I do think he needs to put on weight to be able to play at the NBA level, especially in the front court. But this is a talented player. This is a guy who could definitely thrive in delay action as a trail big man, as a shooter. I do think the playmaking needs to take some steps forward, but he can shoot it. He can finish, put the ball on the deck a little bit, and he can block shots. And I think for Boston, if you're, again, looking to build forward with this team, you're drafting a big man who can have an impact and fit into Joe Mazzulla's team identity, which is get up a lot of threes, stretch the floor, and flow into actions. And I think Guath does all of that as a trail big man, delay action, mover of the basketball. Pretty simple stuff. He's not going to be a super high volume screen and roll big, not looking for long rolls a ton, but it has good hands, good coordination. I think at 23, you can definitely sell yourself early in this process on him being a potential first-round pick guy in this year's class. At number 24, the Dallas Mavericks here now. Getting Cooper Flagg is going to transform this team long-term. Who could they look to put next to him moving forward? I have them going with guard Malik Thomas out of Arkansas. Another highly touted guard recruit going to a Calipari system. And Malik Thomas very much so impressed me in his time at Overtime Elite. Some big-time shot making, some big-time scoring, some downhill presence as well. And a little bit of better natural positional size, around 6'4", 6'5"-ish. I think he's going to measure in pretty decently at the combine this year. His frame, I think, especially indicates to me that he's going to be able to put on some muscle and strength. And if that's the case, Dallas, who might still be looking for long-term guard play, they were able to get Ryan Nembhard on a 2-way contract, which I love for my Dallas Mavericks. They still might be looking long-term for additional guard help. And Malik Thomas, to me, screams like a guy who has the physical traits, some of the shot-making upside to hopefully develop and blossom into over time, that you're able to justify and sell yourself on spending a late first-round pick here in this draft with him. And I think the Mavericks do pretty well if they walk away with Malik Thomas in the 20s, at least with how things project right now. Of course, we'll get way more insight. We'll get way more, kind of intuition on how this is all going to play out with Arkansas's backcourt and who's going to get huge minutes, who won't, what's the opportunity look like, what's the ball handling split look like. But Malik Thomas is someone who's really impressed me in his Overtime Elite film, and I think going forward could definitely stand out in a big way for Arkansas. At 25, the Denver Nuggets here now. Of course, when you have Nikola Jokic, you have a chance. This team's going to be, again, highly competitive this upcoming season. And at 25, I have them selecting guard Ian Jackson out of St. John's. This is a pick that I absolutely love for the Denver Nuggets. And with Jokic's ability to weaponize cutters, weaponize guards who can shoot the ball a bit, but also are downhill fluid movers, guys who can move the rock, and adding a connective piece here, I think for Ian Jackson, who's transferring from UNC to St. John's in an era of college basketball where the transfer portal is more than alive and well, St. John's has a loaded roster. They have a lot of incoming talent. Ian Jackson, I think, is going to have a lot of talent around him to help him. You're going to see him find much better success even than he did this past year at UNC, where he had a pretty good freshman season. So I think in the Big East right now, Ian Jackson's going to have a huge, huge season for Rick Pitino. I think you're going to see him find a way to really carve out significant first-round opportunity in this year's draft. And I think with the, again, existing talent, not only at St. John's, it's going to help him, but now landing in a system and situation like Denver with Jokic, being able to feed him as a cutter, generate transition opportunities. I think Jackson would be able to get out and run a lot, which would help his efficiency, especially as a rim finisher, getting out and running a bit more. I think you can capitalize on a lot of his fluidity and functional athletic skills, especially when you give him opportunities and advantage, and that's exactly what Jokic is better at than anybody in the league, is generating those, drawing double teams, and then passing to guys who are open in that process as well. At number 26, I have the New York Knicks here now at this spot, and with this selection, I have them going at guard Caden Boozer out of Duke. This is a player who I could see New York having pretty significant interest in, especially this late in the first round. Of course, the lesser of the two Boozer twins, but still someone who is talented and will have opportunity for the Blue Devils when it comes to initiating offense. You're going to see him probably rack up some assists on some off-ball stagger screens. Last year we got to see Flegg handle the ball a lot as Con Knippel flew off of Malawach screens. This year you're probably going to see Isaiah Evans in that Knippel role a bit more. You're probably going to see Ngungba setting screens like Malawach, and then you're probably going to see Caden Boozer handling the rock. You'll also see Cam with the ball a bit, but I do think Boozer's going to have some good traditional box score numbers throughout the course of the year. I'm curious what his efficiency is going to look like, especially from three as the season progresses. But this is definitely a player who should right now at least project to be a first-round pick. And for the Knicks, you're looking at a player who this might be a long-term investment for New York. Of course, the Knicks are always tied to big free agents and stuff. Right now, they've got a great iteration of their roster. They're a very, very good team. I think Caden Boozer can be an additive piece to that as well. We've seen them kind of cycle through backup guards, DeLon Wright, Campaign. Maybe they find a bit of stability here with Caden Boozer. This isn't just a long-term pick at trying to get one of the Boozer twins in your building. Now, it definitely might be part of it, and it helps. But I also think Caden Boozer could actually help them long-term if a year from now he does hear his name called to the New York Knicks on draft night. Pick number 27, the Charlotte Hornets here. This is, again, talk about convoluted. This is the worst of Phoenix, Washington, Orlando, Memphis. So I'm projecting that the Orlando Magic win 50-plus games this year and ultimately convey pick number 27 to Charlotte. The Hornets, who earlier in this draft were able to grab Jayden Quaintance, will draft not just one big man in this year's draft, but actually two, by at number 37 drafting center Henry Vasar. The now Tar Heel former Arizona Wildcat big man has some awesome mobility skills for a big as long and as tall as he is, with the rim protection, rim deterrence value that he can provide. I was very impressed by him this year at Arizona when he was able to stymie opponents at the rim, had some functional tools offensively, comfortable with the ball in his hands just a little bit. I think he can build upon that this next year at UNC. And I think defensively can have some real anchor potential at the college level. Now, you're looking at a big man at 27. Am I saying he has anchor potential in the NBA? I'm a little more concerned about that, but I think his ability to cover ground next to Jayden Quaintance gives the Hornets actually the ability to play a bit bigger if they want to. I'm not sure about the shooting long-term for Charlotte if they do decide that, but you'll look at what they already have on the roster. Knippel, McNeely, Miller, LaMelo, they already have a lot of shooting. Maybe they're looking to win with some more size. They need more size still, even after drafting Kalkbrenner at 34. And I think coming away with a combination of Vasar at 27 and Quaintance at number 4, this team is all of a sudden loaded with some size, shot blocking, rim deterrence, screen setting, screen and roll play. And all of a sudden you're saying, whoa, Charlotte's kind of got a squad going on there. And you got to be pretty excited about the future of this organization. 28. The Oklahoma City Thunder again. This is their third first-round pick in this year's mock draft. My way too early mock. This is the second most favorable of Houston, Oklahoma City, and LA. So ultimately I'm projecting here that Houston would be conveying the 28th overall pick. The earlier one was the Clippers. And of course I project the Thunder to be the best team in the league this next year by record. So their pick would be at number 30. You'll see who has that selection in just a few minutes. But here I have the Thunder going with forward Hugo Fekarat from France. And I think specifically this pick, first of all, he's got to put on a lot of muscle. You can tell from the image I chose to put on the graphic here how thin, how skinny he is yet at this point. You could really make an argument that he's a bit of a ways away yet. And I think for Oklahoma City, first of all, they won't make 3 selections on draft night. They're going to do something very similar to what they did in the 2025 draft where they trade out and try and prioritize long-term flexibility instead. But in the event that they do, or you could look at someone who's rangy, has some real skills, kind of an emerging all-around game, a little bit of dribble pass shoot talent here. And if he's able to get bigger, stronger, he could definitely be a combination of a defensive coverage guy where you let him fly around in your rotations a little bit. But if he bulks up and gets a bit stronger, he gives you some positional flexibility to guard longer, bigger, fluid players. And I think, even as good as OKC's defense is, I still think, kind of one of the missing links for them is another big, long, tall forward type to kind of spell Chet Holmgren. And that's kind of the idea behind this pick. Now, ultimately, again, do I think the Thunder will make 3 selections actually on draft night in 2026? No. But if they did, this is a guy who I could see them identifying as kind of a fit piece, as a depth piece on their roster. At number 29, the Cleveland Cavaliers here now. I am projecting them to have the best record in the East, just like they did this past year. Of course, things change. Things shake out. I think this team will definitely make some kind of salary dump to shorten their roster a little bit. We'll see how that affects them. But 29th overall, I have the Cavaliers selecting forward Alex Karaban from UConn. Ultimately, the player I do expect them to salary dump is Max Strus. And if that's the case, then you're looking at, okay, how do we add a wing shooter who can do a little bit more than that? And I think Karaban really fits that criteria. Now, some of you might be saying, oh, great, another year of listening to Sheldon talk about Alex Karaban. Yep, another year of it. And I really like this guy as a prospect. I still stand by that. He would have been top 30 on my 2025 NBA draft big board. He is a forward who can block shots, pretty impressive block rate for a wing forward type, and then shoot the 3 ball pretty well. Now, this last year, UConn had some real challenges that led to some adversity for some of their wing players. And Karaban was someone who was tasked with doing a bit more, and you could just tell how uncomfortable he was in that kind of role and how that role was not even suited for him at the college game. It definitely won't be at the NBA level. Now, luckily, you land in Cleveland, you're landing next to an elite backcourt. Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland. You also have some elite frontcourt players around you. And Evan Mobley, Jared Allen. Mobley can do a bit with the ball in his hands. Allen's one of the best screen and roll players in the league with some real short roll value as well. Karaban becomes such an interesting linchpin for this team because if you want to play Mobley at the center, Karaban can kind of play as a pseudo 4 for you with his length and shot blocking value. If you play him as the 3 next to all of them, he can still shoot the ball. I actually really love this fit. And if Karaban, the fact that he pulled out of the 2025 draft and Cleveland didn't have a pick, well, all of a sudden now if he lands with the Cavaliers in 26, this is a guy that I'm like, oh my gosh, a cheap rookie contract for 4 years for this Cavs team. Sign me up, send in the letter, whatever you got to do. I'm all in on this. I love Alex Karaban as a prospect. Still think there's a lot of value. I think he's going to have a much better season in his senior year for the Huskies, and I think Cleveland would be very, very smart to select him at this spot in the draft. At number 30 now, the Washington Wizards own the worst of Oklahoma City, Houston, and the Clippers. 30th overall, I have the Washington Wizards selecting center Alex Condon from Florida. A talented player, a talented prospect who just won a national championship for the Gators, and I think for Washington could be a tremendous stretch big for them. And you might say, wait a minute, stretch big? It's not like Alex Condon was raining in a whole bunch of threes for the Florida Gators this past year. There's more than one way to function as a stretch big man, and I'm talking about playing as a hub big off the top of the key, where you stretch out the defense because if the big man is not up, the X5 guarding Condon isn't up at the level, all of a sudden you're flowing into DHOs. And that's where someone you just drafted, Trey Johnson, last year, or in the 2025 draft. In the 2026 draft here, I had you earlier getting Darryn Peterson. Could you imagine how dynamic this team could be with Condon flowing into DHOs, one of the smartest passers in the 2026 NBA draft class from a big man position? And you have guys like Trey Johnson playing off of that. You have guys like Darryn Peterson playing off that. You put your guards into advantage. You get them into open space. All of a sudden, you're going to have a really fast, flying, efficient, ball movement-oriented offense. And I think Condon can be a really great staple for a team that already has talent. The Wizards quickly are accruing a bunch of that. Trey Johnson was a great starting point for them in 2025. Of course, Will Riley can fill it up a little bit. And then if they get Darryn Peterson in this draft as well, Alex Condon, I think, becomes the no-brainer selection at number 30, especially with the track record of success. He's a winning player, has had some real winning impact, thrived next to a guy like Walter Clayton Jr. at Florida. And I think if you have some real scoring chops in the backcourt like Trey Johnson and Darryn Peterson now in DC, oh my goodness. Wizards fans, grab some popcorn, get ready to watch some fun basketball. I would love to see it for the Wizards. They might want to just call it in right now and say, hold up, season's over, we got the mock draft, we know what we're doing, this is it, we're done. That's maybe what the Wizards should be doing right now. But thank you all so much for watching. Really hope you guys did enjoy. Tried to make it fun, but of course informational. I felt like a really fun introductory to a lot of these incoming freshman prospects, international guys as well. And then a lot on some of those returners too. Alex Condon, Boogie Fland. We had a lot of guys, Alex Caravan, a lot of fun guys to talk about. So thank you all. Hope you did enjoy. If you did, leave a like, subscribe. Don't forget to comment down below who you think I should be watching for that I did not feature in today's video. And we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.